What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats and another movement skill short story this week for week 7 of the 2025 NFL season. And just like we did in the last movement skill short story, we're going to look at the Detroit Lions and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but this time, instead of looking at Tez Johnson and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we're going to get into the real star of the show, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions, who had a career night, a huge night. Obviously, he's already a star in the league, but this career night showed off who it is that he is as a mover, but also what it is that he's capable of doing if and when the Detroit Lions continue to lean in on his unique offensive skill set. We're going to look at this very first play of this career night. You can see that it's the first quarter, 14:52 left in the first quarter. So that means only 8 seconds have rolled off the clock. This is the first offensive play from scrimmage for the Detroit Lions. And we're going to see Jahmyr Gibbs do Jahmyr Gibbs type things here in the open field versus a number of opponents. And then look at him moving in relation to his teammate, Amon-Ra St. Brown, excuse me, um, in space and in relation to the constantly changing movement problem. Let's look at it again, full speed through here, before actually looking at it in slow motion and looking at these local movement problems that we might be able to set up. And then we're also going to give a little bonus here at the end also that really kind of takes what it is that we've been talking about and showing it across situations. Remember, when my analytical lens looks at movement skill, we're really trying to think about Nikolai Bernstein's 1996 idea of dexterity, this ability to solve any emerging movement problem across situations and across conditions, and how these movements interact with an unfolding, changing problem with all of its surprises and all of its challenges. And that, I think, for me, is the thing that I want you to think about with Jahmyr Gibbs or any other mover for that matter. Now, again, remember, we're using these movement skill short stories to really think about how we, as coaching practitioners, as skill acquisition specialists, as support practitioners, might be able to set up learning environments that present movement problems through the constraint manipulation that we might have on these respective types of problems that we would witness on an NFL Sunday or on an NFL field. And there's a number of different things that we're going to be able to look at here. I'm drawing this workspace size, say from the 30 to the 40, or here the line to gain being the 41, with the ball being at the 31-yard line, the line of scrimmage. So you could do it in any number of ways. And again, in enhancing skill in American football, we have a number of these types of movement problems. This very first one being relatively low in complexity, either a 1v1, one offensive player in relation to in an angle work type of fashion with a defender, or two defenders in a 1v2 type of fashion, or potentially a 2v2. Still all relatively low complexity, but a slice and snippet of the game that we can set up, and with repetition without repetition, where the player is repeating the process of solving that problem again and again, changing nuances, we want to set this up. So I'm drawing that workspace either from the hashes to the sideline, the hashes to the numbers potentially, or the numbers to the sideline. You can set it up in any number of ways. And then this offensive skill player, as I clear the boundary here, again, remember you can set that up any number of ways. Our player here is going to get that ball either on a swing pass, like what we saw from Jared Goff to Jahmyr Gibbs, or we can have that ball already in the player's hands. Maybe we're even setting up cones. Yes, I set up cones occasionally to set up starting points or boundaries. So maybe we would do something like this, and you can't see it. Let's say that's all the way off screen. This cone and that cone being where that guy is starting. And we can move that cone rep to rep as to where, and I just want to show you what that would look like, where this guy would be starting from, because what is it automatically doing if he starts at different places? It's going to change likely the angle that he would take to try to converge upon the ball carrier. And then you give that ball carrier free freedom and exploration, full freedom and exploration, to go and explore and navigate that workspace however it is that he so chooses based on how the behavior affords behavior. The behavior of the defender perpetually feeds into and will channel how the offensive player is going to move. Obviously, we quickly see here that this would be more of a 1v2 type of nature of movement problem, and we do that as well. But this is a really easy time and place in EDDs, everyday drills. Of course, I hate the word drill because I want it to be an alive movement problem set up with as a learning activity where it requires this constant mutual reciprocal relationship between oneself and one's opponents and or teammates, right? But everyday drills in indie periods. Easy way to do this. How are running back coaches doing this? They're setting up cones in a slalom type of fashion, right? We're going to put a cone here that they start in. They're going to run at a 45-degree angle and then another 45-degree angle. That guy in a slalom-like fashion is going to go cut at each respective cone in with a perfect technical model, right? And I put that with the bunny ears or the quotation marks, where that guy's going to be going, as you guys can see, if you think of Jahmyr Gibbs not even being there, from here to here to here, right? This slalom type of everyday drill. I want you to think about what you've seen when a player executes at a typical cone drill, particularly in this slalom type of fashion. They're looking at crisp cuts. They're looking at low center of gravity. They're looking at that outside foot striving and striking the ground and then coming out at that respective angle. But that's not the way that it works here in real life in situ, guys and gals. When the movement problem gets alive, that's not the way it works. This is why we need to have aliveness. We need to have problem solving. We need to have perceptions feeding into cognitions and feeding into actions. You see that little slit from Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the most skillful and fleet of foot of individuals, just adapts and rolls with it, right? Lets those two guys go right into one another. So if you set up the types of angle work in the open field and rep it out really consistently as we do in our learning environment, as we talk about right here, okay? If you do that, I can promise you that those players will begin to become much more adaptable around a constantly changing problem and how to adapt their movement actions in relation to it. So now that those two defenders skate on by, run into one another, Jahmyr Gibbs can move on to this next local movement problem himself and a teammate. And now we can either look, again, same book, same pages, low complexity, fit work in relation to a teammate in space, usually a 2v2 type of situation. But we can do it. Again, if you do have the book, I would implore you to look at page 170, 169, 170, excuse me. Fast pursuit in space at the boundary. Typically, we do this in my learning environment in a 1v3 type of nature, but we do also do it in a 2v2 and a 2v3 and up to a 2v4. What does that look like? You're going to see it right here. So if you pull out the book, if you have it, if you don't, what the heck are you doing? Pick up the freaking book. Okay. Convergence here, fast pursuit at the sideline. That's a 1v3. If we're talking about from the numbers to the sideline, we do that on the weekly in the spring and in the summer in my learning environment. We could do it where it's going to be a 2v3. You see it play out right here in this next slice. Okay. Easy way to see this right there. I'm just drawing the boundary down the numbers. And I can't even get to the sidelines here, but you guys kind of get the deal, right? Usually we're talking numbers to sideline, players entering the space from outside the workspace. We're doing it on the right side and the left side. We're doing it both sides, right? We're changing the starting position of the defenders we're adding a teammate occasionally. So this player, this offensive skill player in space, has to become attuned and adaptable around changing angles from each one of the defenders, 1, 2, and 3 right here, changing bearing angles, changing speeds, changing body orientation and posture and kinematics, as well as then what space affords him, what opportunities exist there that are going to channel his movement actions, and then, of course, the behaviors of his teammate if he has one entering that space. Okay? Another local movement problem, easy to set up. Two local movement problem slices here where the player can become awfully attuned and adaptable. And of course, here we could see another movement problem. Chaser from behind at this complex problem at the sticks or to the sticks or at the sideline at the boundary, right? Lots of ways to manipulate constraints here, guys and gals, to allow this type of movement problem to be reflected in your learning environment on a really frequent basis so that player can become awfully attuned and intentional around that constantly changing problem. Let's look at it here at this next angle, just so you can see sort of what I'm talking about. Tell me if you don't see that very often at cones. If you're doing this in EDDs, indie drills, you don't see that very often, right? But what is Gibbs' behavior around and adaptable through? It's the behaviors of the opponents. This is why opposed work needs to take center stage in all of our learning experiences in my learning environment, and it should for yours too. It's inexcusable that they're not. Indie drills should be more 1v1 in this way. Let me move ahead just as a little bonus here. And the only reason why I'm doing this now is just so you can see it play out in a little different situation. Same swing type of pass situation for Goff to Gibbs, now halfway through the third quarter, deep into the third quarter. It plays out a little differently, right? And Sewell just showing his athleticism off, right? A different teammate, a different situation, still a complex problem at the boundary after a swing pass, but it plays out completely differently. Dexterity, the ability to solve any movement problem across situations. Different situation, different river to stand in, different movement problem to be solved. But we can and we should present these types of movement problems to our players more frequently on a daily basis so they become that much more attuned, intentional, and adaptable around what that movement problem could bring. So hopefully that makes some sense. You can see those two slices play out. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. If you like this video, hit thumbs up and share it with your people. Hit subscribe. You guys know the deal. So for Football Beyond the Stats, I'm Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi. This has been another Movement Skill Short Story, and I'll talk to you all next time.